Welcome back to Prehistoric Reviews. Today we're taking a look at Star Wars' latest new show, Skeleton Crew. A show where I had the lowest expectations out of anybody when it comes to this show. To be fair, the reason I even have that kind of low expectations is because the last one I reviewed, being Acolyte, was really abysmal within its display, and it really kind of waned in me on not trusting a lot of these Star Wars shows a lot. So with Skeleton Crew, I really had nothing to very much say about when it was releasing it. Hell, I think I didn't even see one of its trailers because I was just not as interested and was kind of thinking it was going to be really bad or just not fun at all. But I was kind of proven to at least be wrong. It's not Mandalorian, but it's not Acolyte either. It's actually a pretty good show. In fact, this seems to be the only Star Wars show where there's no woke agenda kind of discourse that's been happening. It really just seems that this show was rather inconsequential to a lot of people, because I kind of saw very little people kind of talk about the show, and I guess I can understand the reason as to why, but as overall it just ended today by the time we're recording this. So I do want to actually give out my thoughts of it because it is a pretty good show. The plot revolves around these four kids who end up living on this planet that's hidden from the entirety of the world. And they end up finding this ship, and due to their shenanigans, they end up in the hyperspace, and they end up getting themselves lost, and they end up finding help through a pirate by the name of John, who's also a Jedi, and a droid pirate as well, and they very much have to work together in order to find this planet, and their home planet holds a little bit more of a mystery that we would end up kind of soon seeing in most of the actual show. The acting overall was actually pretty good, both from John to SM33 to the kids' parents and everybody else. All of them were basically doing pretty much fine. But the ones I would say that are actually pretty good were the kids that we follow, that being Wim, Neil, Fern, and KB. All of them actually act pretty well. The kids in this one, they really were really sticking with their characters, and they really made it believable to where I didn't find them to be really annoying. I really thought that Wim, the almost supposed main character, was going to be the most annoying out of the bunch, and I was probably gonna hate him. But I kind of like what they kind of did with him by having him kind of believe a lot of these Jedi folk tales, where he has a reading on this iPad. It's kind of it's one of those just play type of things or something like that. I'm not sure what it was, but I like how that he very much is of him when he is on the ship, he wants to go out and explore this galaxy that's big and wide, and it's a big adventure for essentially all of them, because it's removed from his mundane life and what he very much needs to do. And it ends up going throughout most of the show where he ends up realizing that this is not the adventure he kind of thought it was. In fact, the entirety of the galaxy kind of rejects that notion of an actual real adventure, and he almost kind of gets a hard-hitting reality. I mean, he tries his best to be a little optimistic, but by the end, you can almost kind of see a little bit of him trying to kind of give up a lot of that. Where now he's kind of just wanting to just go home, because he's just disappointed with what he's been seeing, which I actually kind of think that's kind of a unique thing to make his character kind of be a little bit more challenged in that regard. And then the other cast members, Neil and Fern, they also did a good job, and the MVP honestly was KB. She was absolutely one of the faves, and SM33, I gotta say, is probably one of my favorite droid designs out there. I just really like how he just looks this almost robotic skeleton with a peg leg and all that. I just really like that about him. And Jai was actually a really good character, because you almost both sympathize with what he's very much trying to do in that case, but also very much know how completely wrong he kind of is, because he is at least at one point he's trying to help a lot of the kids, but you can also kind of sit in the back of your mind that something's not right with this guy, and and something's not been right with him from the very beginning in that case. I also gotta appreciate how they kind of made this world kind of almost feel it's kind of an adventure video game of sorts sometimes. where it literally is kind of like reminiscent of like things of like the Goonies, which like this show was like inspired a lot by. So it kind of does like make sense a little bit, but I kind of appreciate it, especially like the crabs as well, like that big crab that we saw. Apparently, that's not even like CGI. No, that's like practical. They made that shit like work. It's like a large thing. Like it's absolutely fantastic, and I really do like the skeleton crew and like its mysteries and all that. And speaking of like mysteries, I do want to lead into some of the problems I do kind of have with the show in general, which is that some mysteries that they kind of do have, they almost kind of get completely left behind, or like some didn't get as like massive amounts of like payoff. Like some kind of did, like some became like very relevant, but after some were just like we kind of got to learn a little bit less about most of the things we kind of just saw. Like one example would be being like the like this is kind of like a spoiler for like one episode, but like one of the episodes, but like they end up going in like this spa like planet. They are like going underneath the cave where like they found like the treasure under the map and everything else, and they stumble upon like a hologram of like this pirate that like has been on like the kid's home planet at Aten before, and they very much talk about like what was in there, what happened, and like we see like the hologram like speaking, and like we see like physical body, but like we don't see the face, and it's kind of like all glitching out, and like it never came into like anything else. We never find out who he was at all, and like after that we just never mentioned him at all, except for like things where like it was relevant where he like was on the planet. But like what was the point of like trying to obscure his face? Like, I mean, he's not like he was not like an integral character for the most part. Like he kind of just only served the plot for like a lot of stuff like in specifically, but like why obscure his face? Like there was no need to do that. He's dead. He's not like gonna come back again like in like the finale to do anything else. Like no, he's just completely dead, and I don't understand as to why that they decided to just do that at all. It kind of feels like a lot of it's just like cut out and just like getting left behind for no reason, which leads to like a most small point, and probably a point that a lot of you are probably sick and tired of me of saying it a lot in my prehistoric reviews, but I just have to mention it because like it's just, I don't know why they keep doing this. Why are we making so many like of these like shows like only 8 episodes long or just shorter? I cannot and I will not ever understand as to why we keep doing this. I am so sick and tired of like 8 episodes of like shorter things that happen to just like make it a full scene of like 12 or 13. At least if you could do that. Like just like I'm so tired and sick of like these short like series that like feel limited so much. And there's also at least kind of another thing I also have a thing with it, is that this show kind of feels like it was almost like trying to be like another season, like an extra season 2, because like the way it ends, which also leads into, I know it's kind of like I'm leading into a lot of other things, but like it kind of just like almost kind of coincides with itself. So like the ending of it, like I don't have a problem with the finale. The finale is actually pretty good. Like it has a lot of it. It has like the good actions. They're defeating the pirates. The parents are helping, and like everyone's doing like their part, and it's like a pretty good stuff. But then it kind of feels like they cut off like the conclusion, or like all the characters would be together and like the aftermaths and all that. It's just like we don't get that. It kind of just it kind of ends with just like Wim looking up at the sky, kind of running away from like the little bit of the danger, and then it's just like him looking up at like the resistance fires of the New Republic, and it's just like he gets like a new inspiration because like they're the actual good guys, whereas he believed that John was. But that's really all there is to it. Like we don't get like anything else from like the kids. We don't know what happens to like SM-33. We don't know what happens to like John. We know what happens to, like the planet after this whole thing, and it kind of feels like we were kind of robbed of that kind of like conclusion. Like maybe it was ended the way that it was supposed to be, but like I was just not a big fan of how it just like kind of cuts abruptly a lot. And like I don't know, I was just not a big fan of it, and really I think it's also kind of why it felt like that the show wanted to have like a season 2, because it just feels like a lot of it just was like set up for like other future seasons that they did not exactly know if they were going to get, if the show would end up like working out for it. And considering as of right now, I kind of get a report that it was like the lowest viewing like Star Wars series ever. I don't think it was ever going to get that, and it is kind of sad. But like also like, what more could you have done with like a season two? Because like after that, like they did the whole premise. They really just did the whole premise of like the show. Everything else, the arcs were concluded. Everybody like had their stories concluded. Like after that, like that's basically it. But even aside from a lot of those things, I do think Skeleton Crew is actually pretty good. It's honestly one of the better Star Wars shows out there, and while it's not like the best thing out there in the world that's going to like blow your mind entirely, it is absolutely one of those shows where it's kind of accessible towards anybody, because like it really is kind of like a perfect sci-fi like series if you don't know much about like anything with Star Wars, and it just allows you kind of like have fun with like how it does with like its galaxy, the characters, and everything else. And it just leads to kind of have like a good time to very much see what happens. And I think I can actually really appreciate that. Like most series don't really need to be like a big epic thing that happens. But as far as Skeleton Crew, I think it's actually pretty good. Honestly, it's probably one of the most ones where like people didn't exactly fight over like how they were kind of like doing this, and I'm kind of okay with that. A little disappointed with how like they handled most shit in there, but I think it's honestly one of the things that I think I could safely say that it's actually, as far as I know, it's great. It's pretty great. I would recommend it to anybody if you're very much interested in this. So giving this thing a rating, I'm going to give this thing a nice 75%. As far as Star Wars shows goes, this is actually a pretty good one. I would say it's kind of like one of my third favorite Star Wars shows out there. So, yeah, that's really all there is to this, and that's about the video. Bye-bye.